just again, coming in, we did have an RFPs did come in from impact fees. We did have two organizations that responded, and we had to open we had to open the bids last Thursday, inventory them, and I think we got a request, a right to know request. All right, so there should be I think there should be a hard copy from the spreadsheet in which these things are indexed. All right, so, and then they'll also yeah, it's right here, sorry.
Right here.
So, yeah, the proposal tabulation is what you're looking at here. Dee was good enough to basically put this together on a pretty rapid turnaround time, so I'm going to put that out there. I think what's important, is right now is that, we have this. It was basically a la carte. We asked that it be, they provide the impact methodology to us on an a la carte basis. All right, so we have the option that if we're going to even move forward on any of these, we can do it all, we can do it in part, and such. So we have basically probably about 60 days, all right, to do some sort of follow-on analysis. But I think what's important is that, we do have the RFPs, and we're going to have to work, collaboratively with the Board of Selectmen and the town management. All right, so, in terms of what we're going to be in a position to pay for, if we're going to pay for something, and then come up with a methodology for picking.
But we did carry a number. There was something in the budget, correct?
Yes, we did budget for, a couple items that we anticipated. We wanted to, engage with RPC, all right, in terms of having some sort of a contract with them, a circuit rider type arrangement.
But I think impact fees.
And we
is a
also
separate
did
line
and we
item.
did impact fees, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So, but my understanding is that there might be some challenges, with the budget right now. But I think that this is important. All right. We did put out the RFP. We did get something back. In the same way too, that we did get a proposed contract from RPC. All right. So, I think next steps are.
Yeah, I think one of the things, well, obviously, once we see, what's there for the funds, is kind of almost prioritize, between school, recreation, and public safety, which one we think is 1, 2, and 3. If you can't do them all, what's the first one we want to get done?
Right, and absolutely, and what can be maybe punted into next year. too,
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Another one. Keep moving.
As we talked earlier, I'm glad that we had two companies respond. I was almost half expecting not to have any, but we had two, which was good.
Yeah, having 0 versus 1 probably would have been better. And so, Richard, the process here is for us to go through, review this, send comments we have or questions,
Well, right now.
bring them up at the next
Discussion.
meeting. How do
Well,
we want to
you have the
organize?
material.
Yeah, no,
So, I
right.
mean, it's, I for one, will go through this and take a look at it. But I think maybe in a
I
very.
do not have that material.
You don't, I know, I'm sorry. You can have mine. Then we'll have another copy.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I can get it later, but
Okay.
I do not have it.
But yeah, we're gonna have to decide, again, and I don't know if I want to just be doing sort of it in the abstract. I think I kind of want to have a little bit of buy-in at least.
Well, that's what I'm asking. What's the
Yeah.
process here?
Well,
And then, do we provide what we would prioritize? Because I think that's gotta have I think that's where you start. Say, okay, I like X, but schools more important than anything else.
Right,
I'm just-
exactly. It has to be, what do we think is the first one that definitely should
Yes.
get done, then what's number two, what's number three?
Yep.
In a perfect world, obviously, you'd be able to do them all, but that's gonna be tight.
Right.
All right, so I guess, conceptually, take a look at it and we rank them in terms of, 1, 2, or 3. It'd be awesome if we could do all of them, but if not, then this is the order in which we would want to move ahead. And again, like I said,
And if
we
we
have,
prioritize it, we'll see what's there in the budget that we can handle. And you might even be able to go back to one of these companies and say, look, here's what we can do this year. Next year, we're gonna do this one.
Yeah,
And then they may hold these prices too.
yeah,
If you give them that information.
yes,
It's a negotiation.
yep. No, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. It's maybe half of this is the priority. We could get maybe a quarter of it done this year. We've got the funds. And then
Yeah, and let's face it, they're used to dealing with towns.
yeah,
So they're used to someone coming back to them and say, look, we're all in, we want to hire you, but we can't do it all this year. Here's what we can do. Next year, we'll take another chunk.
and next year, we can't even do anything until after town meeting, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So next year, it's not January 1st. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. All right.
so I guess, in terms of, same logic that we're applying to impact fees, I think it applies to RPC. Because I know that Mr. Roche did, provide a starting point in terms of what a contract would look like. Again, sort of an a la carte theme. This is the hourly rate. So usually, like Atkinson is the example, I guess. You'd have X number of billable hours that you would build into the contract, right? So.
Yeah, and that's a discussion we can think about here as well, right? RPC, can we forego that, say, till January 1 and do another one of these? Where do we think? If we think RPC's at the top of all of them, then that's the first thing you do, right? So it's something for us to decide where we think you'd like to see your money spent first.
Yeah, like I said, I think we budgeted for both. All right, so I can understand. We looked at, let's say, impact fees a la carte. All right, and I guess if I'm using the word a la carte with respect to the contract for RPC, it's basically you're contracting with them for sort of stated support.
Right.
Okay, so
$1,000 a month.
yeah. So, and that would be sort of how we engage them. If we want to have somebody here that's going to sort of consult on, let's say, a more technical application, we could do that. Do we
I'm
want?
a fan of having RPC, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's something to think about.
Right.
How we want to prioritize everything.
Well, plus we have half the year. Okay,
Right.
so I mean, it's like if we budgeted for the whole year, we're conceptually looking, at least from the contract wise, July forward. So, I mean, we're not, necessarily looking at like, we don't need to burn all of it in 6 months. We could just say that, this is what we could engage from 7/1 to 12/31, and then with the idea then that, we've cleared 2025, whatever, and then sort of, if we liked what we saw, then re-engage them for maybe, the full year, something to that effect. So just something to, because I know that maybe last meeting or 2 meetings ago, there was a question that we haven't heard anything. Now we have something. We have something from RPC and we have responses for impact fees. So probably, so maybe next meeting or something, have something in mind of like what we want to, maybe between now and.
Yeah.
We can let the town, Mr. Colby know that, where we stand with respect to this. And maybe
Yeah.
start that discussion about, what we can do and what we can't do.
Yep.
All right.
I mean, I have some comments just on it. Is the best way to do it is just send them to everyone, you know? Because there's, like, I look at it, there's no termination provision, there's no notice of termination in here. So to me, those are typically things you'd
Are
see.
you talking about like the RPC contract?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything on that, but they're minor nits and most of those are questions, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not, you know, you probably have a little more experience with respect to contracts than I do, and, you
Well,
know.
before we'd enter into a contract,
Yeah.
I think we need to
legal would look
decide
at it,
on
legal would
these.
look at
I'm
it.
sure, but I mean, it's,
But-
I can't not look at things the way I know how to look at things, you
No,
know? So,
absolutely, absolutely.
But we first have to decide where we want to move first.
I don't think the idea, I don't think the concept of looking at this as a kind of bundle of funds to see where we prioritize where they get spent, you know? I mean, obviously the impact fees, we're driving that. But I think we need some service, we need some help from RPC
Exactly.
for sure, so.
It's, you know, I mean, it's like, for instance, I mean, it's, you know, if we're looking for, you know, if we had a circuit rider here, you know, in terms of like, you know, planning the next workshop or something like that, maybe instead of, you know, a little quick expert advice pointing us in a particular direction would be welcome. You know,
No, and I did, the RPC I thought worked great when we had them, yeah.
yeah, I had nothing but, you know, it was nothing but a good experience,
Yeah.
at least for me. All right, anything else on the subject of impact fees and RPC contracts? All right. What else we got here? Rules and procedures. All right, this, you know, we had sent what we had worked on to be reviewed by Attorney Cleary and his staff. He got that back today. So I think there were some suggestions. You'll see that the suggestions, I believe, are in red.
No, they're in blue.
They're in blue? Okay. All right. It's not, I mean, just in going through it, I mean, I didn't think there was anything that was necessarily controversial in terms of, you know, suggestions and things like that.
No, actually, they're pretty straightforward, and there's, you know, I think there's a couple of comments that, you know, I saw that probably just require an answer to clean up some ambiguity maybe in some of the language. But I would say every comment here, you know, and again, I did the first pass, maybe reading it for 15 minutes. I would say virtually every comment here is on point.
Yeah.
And should be
So is this just a
accepted.
matter of just incorporating, let's say, the comments, having the you know, the comments that are incorporated, we take another look at it, we agree with it, then we should move forward with it. That would be sort of my itinerary on it. You know, just so in some sense, you kind of close the loop on some of these things. So,
Yeah, he's got 5 questions in here, you know, out of the couple of the comments that I think just require answering, and it's easy to fix, you know, a word here and there, other than everything he's suggested changes on. But I think we're at the point that go through, resolve those 4 or 5 questions, and then I think this thing is ready to
Yep.
go to public hearing.
Yep.
all right, so we'll do that. Do you want to target that for our next workshop? Or is this something that, you know, if we don't have any applications, or if we only have one application, is this something we just,
I think you can target it for next meeting. I think you can have this thing,
Well, we only have, what, one application for next meeting, is that right?
yeah.
So that could be the two items.
Yeah,
There is just one?
I think there's just one.
Okay.
yeah, I
That's-
think it's the holdover from,
The first
Last
one,
meeting.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's it.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, I thought there was a legal notice here, right?
Yeah, there was.
I think so, but I think it's the legal notice for, the place up on 125.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right here. You got it?
I think that's it. And if that's all we have, I don't see why we couldn't add this to the agenda and those are our two agenda items.
Excellent. Ahead of time, right? All right, so,
I'll go through all these. I'll turn these around probably sometime tomorrow. So you can take a look.
do we require legal take another pass at, or is it just
I
sufficient?
think always as a courtesy is reflect his changes, zip them off to him. If he's okay, then we're okay.
Shouldn't we just save this though and bring it with us next time?
There'll be a new-
You're gonna see a new copy
Okay.
with,
All right.
with the changes reflected.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. All right, I have on here is, we were supposed to have a meeting of the zoning subcommittee, but we kind of ran into some logistics in terms of getting the required notices out. In my defense, I think there's an issue with the Outlook email in terms of its updating. So I mean, stuff that's said that's sent, I think is maybe queued up in a Outlook server somewhere and then doesn't go out immediately. So whatever. So it's so we didn't have a zoning subcommittee meeting. But Dan, if you want to just sort of high level summary of when we do have one, maybe what we might be talking about.
Well, I mean, I think the big thing is what's going on at the state, and I will tell, I mean, this is the file of everything that's passed. Half of these things affect subdivision and site plan. The other half affect zoning. And as, Bill, you probably know this better than the rest of us, but there's this, there's this kind of queuing and voice vote thing that goes on at the state level, and nothing's done till it's done. Even things that might have been laid on table can kind of reappear,
Yep.
They're-
Right, you think it's not there, and
Right.
there it is.
Right. So, and there's a couple in here that we personally would not like to see reappear. My thought was, once we kind of get our hands around this, is we do the state changes in some sort of omnibus kind of amendment to the zoning ordinance, where we layer them in there. We can do a nice kind of tight topical description. These are, mandated by the state, and summarize them, and then obviously have the whole detail. But I think that clears and makes rather than, what could be,
Yes.
20 different, amendments,
Agreed.
So that was one thought. The other was, if we have like things we want to correct in the zoning ordinance that are relatively straightforward and easy, we do the same thing. We do an omnibus. And then what we do is then we pick the things that we want to be very specific and put those in separate amendments. And at the end of the day, we get down to 5. That's the goal.
Yep, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Chances are we may not make it, but that's
No,
the goal.
but
You gotta have a goal.
But I think with these kind of omnibus things, as long as it's not too like Jabberwocky, that you can't get a good understanding of what it is, or they don't lend themselves to a coherent topical description of substance, The topical description of substance becomes a whole page, that. So I think we just try to be nimble enough as we're going through and looking at these. But I think we can do this in 5 amendments.
That'll be a first.
Just on, I guess this would be old business, but you had said something about the email, so that just kind of reminded me, what is the status of, you had spoken about board emails for the budget committee? I mean, for the planning board, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a resolution on that yet, right?
Now, at least what I was told, that the planning board should be getting its own emails. Okay, and that it was an issue that needed to be worked out with IT. Now, last night, at least the budget committee, I don't know if that's, I don't know if it's crossover with them. I think it was a question that might come to, it sounds like you're buying the domains or something like that in tranches, so that you're buying them at 10 at a time or something like that. So there might be a monetary consideration.
Yep. Well, there's
So-
definitely, it's gonna cost some money.
Yeah.
But, I know it's being looked at.
Okay.
I think the town have its own domain. I mean,
Yeah, but everything gets on a license. That's how-
Is it?
That's how software works.
oh,
How it works. I'm in the business.
all about the money.
So is there any time, I mean, people looking at it, is there,
I know it's being looked at. Hopefully we'll have a resolution. Hopefully by the end of the month.
okay, all right.
So will that be just for the planning board, or is that also for the budget committee?
I only specifically talked about planning, but I would think if
Okay.
we're gonna do one, we should do both, right?
Of course.
Oh, I absolutely
Planning
agree.
first, though.
Yes, first.
Well, what would probably happen if you're on both, you're only gonna get one.
Yeah,
Oh, no, that would
Yeah.
make complete sense. It's just going to be your name with the town
Right.
domain after, so.
It's just, right.
All right. Anything else on zoning to date? Do we want to, if we're going to schedule a meeting where we're going to meet, then
We can
we'll
do it.
just do the exercise.
we can do it
of-
tonight, and I will personally bring the notices. I won't rely on the email exchange.
Right.
That wasn't just your fault. I did
Well,
one and then I got busy.
I was stuck in jury duty, so if that's a defense. I'm
I don't
gonna-
believe that was town business.
Yeah?
Oof.
What's that?
I said, I don't believe that's town business.
State business. Right. Okay, if there's nothing else on zoning, generically, I do have one item that just kind of came up. It was sort of a target of opportunity. And it had to do with, we had two warrants out there that, was it for home office
Office by right.
What's that?
Home operation.
Home operations. All right. There was one of the amendments, warrants, basically proposed moving the table of contents from one location to another. And the other one was sort of the meat of it. And that passed. Okay. But maybe people hate table of contents in Plastow. I don't know. But that warrant didn't pass. Okay. So, but it seems though, I think the town or elements in the town have taken the position that because one didn't pass and the other one did, that they're not implementing
Right.
the home office component of things. That
Is that true?
I haven't seen what the final thing is. I haven't looked at that.
That right now, that's accurate because they're charging people a fee
Right,
for a
and they
home
had to pay it.
office.
yeah,
And, where it stands, and I raised this, and I raised it directly with the town manager. He has told me that he's got a legal view, and maybe two legal views, which he has not shared with me directly, and that he wanted time to kind of run through the process, which I don't think is unfair. I have given him my view. I don't think the way this is going on is actually works from the way the town's handling it as of right now. And I've also given the view that, rather than struggling and paying for lawyers, we bring this right to the ZBA. The ZBA is the interpretive body here.
well, to that point though, I mean, specifically, the warrant or the citizens petition that did pass with respect to the ZBA actually includes language that makes the ZBA the body to adjudicate these types of questions. I
And
think.
that didn't create it out of thin air. It's an RSA. It's required by the RSAs. So the ZBA is the body that interprets the ordinance. That's by statute. And we could bring that we can raise that as a question to the ZBA, uniquely as it has, I have a home office, that meets the standard of the zoning ordinance. I could bring it. Because apparently under this, I would have to pay a fee.
Well,
And let's just, so I can put a little bit of a bow around here. I just want a mechanism. I just want this to be addressed. I don't really, on a personal level, I don't want to be, in another argument. Okay.
no, I don't think
But
anyone
I-
should be involved in a particular argument. I think, here's the question that, that kind of intrigued me, and I did speak to the town manager also, that there was no linkage when we proposed these warrants. There was no linkage similar to when we had the prime wetlands. You had language that said if one didn't pass, then the other one was of no effect. There was no linkage between the two. We did have these warrant articles reviewed by our legal counsel. All right. So, and, nothing came back in terms of, oh, this should be linked, because there was something contingent. All right. So from my perspective, we had two well-formatted and reviewed warrants. One didn't pass and one did. And as such, from my perspective, that it should go into effect. And if there's subsequent questions about it, I appreciate the fact that maybe other people are deciding to, talk to legal or get a legal opinion, but the appropriate mechanism, I think, is, if it's already laid out and it needs to be interpreted and there's a question, then it should be interpreted by the ZBA. So,
Yeah, our opinion is actually irrelevant,
right.
No, it is.
I know.
Our job is to design the ordinance. The legislative body enacts the ordinance. The Board of Selectmen enforce it, and the ZBA interprets it. Those are the cornerstones of zoning ordinances. And so, to me, if there's a difference in view as to how an ordinance is being interpreted, and it is here, because this was lawfully adopted by the legislative body, then it just needs to go to the ZBA. And rather than wasting a lot of time, put it there.
Well, I think it should already be dealt with, to be honest. I don't know why the feet dragging is going on. The same thing happened with the Homestead Food Acts.
Yep.
There was a giant foot drag on that when there was no reason to. The people voted it in, and, it took forever. We have a full-time health inspector, so it should have almost been ready to go right immediately after the vote. Should have been, worded should have already been adopted or ready to adopt. This was also on the warrant. This was a known issue coming up, and to find out that people are now having an issue is a little bit upsetting. So if it takes getting it to the ZBA, I think it should be done immediately.
Well, here's the thing is, if we have until June 11th, if we wanted to raise it directly as a question to the ZBA. And it would have to come from the planning board as a vote by the planning board.
Okay.
I can't make a motion, but I would definitely do that if I could, because I myself have a home office, and I think it's ridiculous because this is one of the things I voted for, and the people voted for it. So I don't know why we're not making it happen.
No, trust me, I have a motion right here.
Okay.
But let me just, I think in trying to work collaboratively and collegially through, issues that we may have a difference of opinion on, I think we should give the town manager, who said he was looking at, and we've had conversations, so it's not like it's time to actually get back and say, okay, this is our view.
Well,
I was, obviously I drafted the motion because I was more, I was more of the mind to just go and do it. But I do want to give the town manager, it seems like, his last communication to me was that he was reviewing the response from legal and its implications, and that's it. I don't know what that is.
yeah, it's a similar,
Yeah.
a similar message. But I guess, generically speaking, okay, I think, we had something that was properly formatted, it was reviewed, and it was voted on, right? So, I mean, if there was a question, there's a question, but it should have been implemented.
Yeah.
I guess, you know what I'm
Well,
saying?
I mean, I don't think we need to talk about that. You're
Right.
talking to the guy who wrote it.
Right.
I know exactly what it meant. I know exactly what it was
Right.
intended to do. I know how the zoning ordinance works.
Well, I'm just saying procedurally, it should have been implemented. And, and it's not, and again, and if there's, maybe it's and if there's a question about what it might mean, because I mean, sometimes we've had zoning that's been adopted and it was reviewed, but, it was null and void because it was nonsense.
Yeah, no, there's for sure. I mean, you can go back in history, but
Yeah.
the question to this board is, do we want to do something now? Or do we want to?
Well, if we were to vote on something now, we could always just withdraw it, right? I mean, it's, if we say that we want the ZBA to interpret something, that could be the sense of the board. And if, so we're on the agenda, but then we could always withdraw it.
If things are resolved,
Yeah,
then
if things
yeah.
are resolved, there's no point to just move forward.
That would be my recommendation, that we draft an inquiry to the ZBA in accordance with the sections of the zoning ordinance and ask for their interpretation.
Yep.
And if we have to the 11th
Right.
to submit it.
No, or, no, what
I
is
think
the,
we should take about, just submit it now.
Well, we could do either one. It doesn't matter.
like I said, we could always just withdraw it off the
Correct.
agenda. So,
Right.
it is, we're not under, we did it, then we could just withdraw it from the agenda, that we're not going to move forward with it.
Okay.
So,
One of the challenges we have is one of the attorneys that supposedly opined on this is Attorney Cleary. So who's representing us? Who's representing the ZBA?
Exactly.
I mean, this has gotten fairly murky quickly.
well, that doesn't that become an issue if in the event that there's an actual hearing? I mean, it comes to a head if there's an actual hearing.
Well,
But if we were to, but if
You
it were,
can't, you
But
can't
if
go
it
down
were-
the road.
if it were resolved,
Yeah, well,
then we just withdraw it and
If-
say that away.
yeah, you can't, you can't start down the path with representation that doesn't work as representation. And I'm not saying,
It's not our concern, I don't think. Other people would have to make the arrangements that they would need to make to move forward with whatever representation they're going to do. Right?
yeah, no, I'm not there on that one. I don't think this works that way. Yeah,
I don't think our hands should be tied.
I think it is. It's already
Well,
tied.
other people can untie hands, if they feel that they're in a bind. But if we're going to say that we want to move forward with respect to having a ZBA providing a ruling, then we should be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I'm not talking necessarily, the ZBA thing is, but my concern is, allegedly Mr. Cleary has rendered a view, okay? Whether that's the form of a legal opinion, I don't know. People use opinions, and when they're talking about attorneys, not necessarily in the right context. So if he has a view, and that view is either different, we haven't been provided the opportunity to confer with counsel about our view. That's the concern. And then if he's already rendered a view, how does he represent the ZBA because he perhaps has prejudged,
Well, we don't know.
We don't, but
Yeah, we don't
there's evidence that something occurred.
He
Or
went,
not evidence, there's been a representation that something has occurred. This is a mess.
Well, yeah, could be.
It is.
And I raised the issue not as an authority, but just as a concern.
so he hasn't rendered a view to us, you're saying outside? No, okay. So
And it's only alleged that he's rendered a view to
Right,
the
that's what
town.
I'm saying. We don't know,
Yeah.
Oh,
it's all,
Well, then you're gonna have to wait.
Hey, I'm
I don't
just,
think we have.
I'm sure the town manager is relaying my view, which he has in writing. I'm just relaying his view, which I have in writing. And I'm not saying the view's bad or it's just different.
I don't, like I said, apart from if we want to say that we want to have the ZBA do something, I think that would be what we would be looking at.
So we
Now,
would
if
have
this-
to draft something for the ZBA to look at.
Motion wise, right,
Well, not only just motion wise, but an actual correspondence
Right.
right.
to lay out, at least the broader points of our concern.
Right.
And then who do we have review that? Attorney Cleary?
It's gonna be the same one.
Well, he'd be the one that we would ask
Yeah.
to review it. And then everything else that follows from that, you'll quickly know. It's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what we should do.
By summary, you want to summarize that?
Yeah, I'm going to say, I hereby make a motion that the planning board make an inquiry to the ZBA in accordance with the provisions Article 20, Section 220-137.4, interpretation of the ordinance on the adoption and enforceability of Article 10 of the ordinance.
I second it.
Yep.
Is there any discussion on it?
No, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna abstain in case I get pulled into this somehow. That's the reason.
That's the right.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything they want to say?
I think it should be dealt with. I think it should already have been dealt with, so if I was voting, I would vote yes.
Yep.
All right, so nothing else? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
All right. 401.
There you go.
That was easy.
You'll get a gold star before you're finished.
Exactly. All right, so. I think we'll do Thursday. I don't have anything else in terms of, on the agenda. Is there anything else that,
Should read the legal notice though.
thank you. It was. No, there we are. All right. Following legal notice, the Plastow Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, June 18th at 6:30 PM. The location is 145 Main Street, second floor, Plastow, New Hampshire, to consider the following. PB 25-06, the completeness of an application from David Abari for review of a site plan for the redevelopment of a retail plaza to include a restaurant with a drive-through and continued retail use with landscaping, drainage, parking, and lighting updates. The property is located at 111 Plastow Road, tax map 28, lot 16 in the C1 zoning district. The property owner of record is Plastow Road 111 LLC. The application is found to be complete. The planning board may immediately conduct the public hearing. All right. If you are being notified of this public hearing before because you are noted to be in a butter to the subject property and/or other interested party to one or more of the above applications. If you are part of a HOA or COA, please distribute this information to all members. All right. Anything else?
You want to talk about the July 2nd meeting?
Yes. Look at that. Bill, thanks. We're going to press on for the July 2nd workshop. There's a lot of important stuff. No? Okay. Do we want to hold the July 2nd workshop meeting or just consider that a holiday?
Who can say no faster?
Right.
Be gone.
All right. So there will be
I
no
won't be
July
there.
2nd workshop meeting.
Good.
Okay.
We're just going to take a consensus of the board and,
If I could vote, I
Before
would
the-
vote for the meeting, but
all right.
There's always one.
love hanging out with you guys.
In
It's so
school,
fun.
you were probably the one, too, teacher, you forgot to, collect the homework.
All right. With that said, I'll close the meeting at 7:56.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.